3, 2, 1, go.
All right, welcome everybody to the Sunrise School Division regular board meeting on today, April the 20th. My name is Paul Mang. I'm the board chair. I'm going to call our meeting to order, and we're going to have Springfield Middle School sing O Canada for us. So please stand if you are able to. Thank you to Springfield Middle School, much appreciated. Next on our agenda is our treaty acknowledgement, and Trustee Barry is going to go ahead and do that for us tonight. Trustee Barry, you're muted.
Mr. Chairman, I got kicked out, but I shall ascertain the proper document here. We acknowledge, can you hear me?
We can.
We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thanks, Trustee Barry. For the public knowledge, we have our 9 trustees that are here tonight. We have our Superintendent Timko and our Assistant Superintendent Julian, our Secretary Treasurer Carlton, and our board support Bonito. As well as tonight we have a presentation, and we have a Principal of Student Services, Wilgosh, Mr. Jody Wilgosh is with us in the meeting. So we have an adoption of the agenda, so be it resolved that the board approve the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Paczkowski, seconded by
Hare, seconded. Reed.
Hare, thank you. Any questions to it? Hearing none, we'll vote. Russ, did the vote come up for you? Oh, there we go. So there's 8 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you. 3.1 is the chair's comments. I will remind you to send all questions to scarlton@sunrisesd.ca. Your name and address of the sender must be included in the email for any questions that you would like to pose that we'll try to answer for you tonight. I just want to say kudos to our staff and senior administration, as the weather in the last little while has been nasty, and you've all had to consider yourselves about safety for our students and our staff, as well as to our bus drivers, transportation crew, for getting our kids to and from school safely during the inclement weather. Thank you, certainly from all of us. I appreciate that, or we all appreciate that here on the board. Share a story 3.2, open it up to trustees. Anybody want to share? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Kathy, I'd like you to introduce Jody and talk about the presentation. So Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have with us again, as part of our schedule, Principal of Student Support Services, Mr. Jody Wilgosh, and he is going to share some information about the 6 colony schools in our school division. They are all K-12 schools, and he is going to bring you some information about what they are working on, what they're doing, what's unique to each of them. I think he's got a PowerPoint to share with you, and we'll answer some questions at the end of it. Are you ready, Joe?
I am.
Feel like you might be? There you go. All yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm here to present on our 6 colony schools. So we have Grafton School in the Springfield colony, Gross School in the Whiteshell colony, Heartland School and colony, Hoffer School in the Greenwell colony, Richland School on the Ridgeland colony. I originally had a mistake there, and Rob pointed that out for me, that it is Ridgeland colony, and Springwell School on Brightstone colony. So we'll go through all of them. We're going to start with our smallest school, which is Grafton School, and that is on the Springfield colony. So Grafton School has 15 students, 1 full-time teacher, teaching staff, and 2 educational assistants, 1 at 0.8 and 1 at 0.58. And so while there is a 1.0 teaching staff, that includes the 0.10 principal time. And Grafton is actually staffed for a little bit more teaching time than that, but it's converted to EA time to allow for more adult supervision and learning support throughout the day. So the current principal, Shannon Cote, will be going on mat leave very soon, and Elizabeth Redekop is excited to take over for her. Due to the distancing protocols, the gym was repurposed into a large classroom for this year. This was a community decision in support of the programming needs of the students, because the gym was on a regular basis in the evenings being used for recreation activities, but those had to be canceled to allow the move to happen, and so great support by that community. There's been a lot of successful literacy interventions, specifically at the grade 4 to 7 level this year, and that's been with the support of our literacy program leaders and the sharing of resources. And one of the things is our colonies have very small budgets that don't allow for some big expenditures. An example that one of the literacy resources we use in Sunrise is the Fountas and Pinnell, and so they're about $4,000 per set, and with a small budget that Grafton has, that's tough for that to happen. So what we're doing is we're sharing some divisional resources, and as well with some other schools to make sure that the students have what they need there. And the main industry in Springfield, main industries are farming, a wide variety of farming, as well as the Springfield Woodworking, which produces high quality kitchen and bathroom cabinets for sale to the public. Our next school is Gross School on the Whiteshell Colony, which is very close to Whitemouth. And Gross School has 34 students, 2.375 teaching staff, and 2 full-time educational assistants. So the new principal this year is Kristen Bellini. She's not new to the school. She's been there for a number of years, and She was and continues to be the early years classroom teacher as well, and she's developed some real solid relationships there with students and colony members over the years. The students and community really take pride in the education as a whole, and it's really evidenced there throughout everything that they do. While outdoor phys ed can be a lot of fun, it also poses some difficulties and limitations on the type of program and activities that students can engage in. And I think there has been some talk about building a gym, and I'm really hopeful that's something that can happen sooner rather than later. In addition to the lack of a gymnasium, the physical layout of the plant is definitely not conducive to movement in between the three classrooms without causing some type of disruption to the learning environment. However, having said that, there was really a positive atmosphere there in the school among the students and the staff, and that's evident. And their main industry is metal fabricating, where they make chairs. They have powder coating and have the metal roofs as well. Heartland Colony School is located just off Garvin Road and very close to Hazel Ridge. And I do have to say, it's not just the nicest school I've ever been in, it's quite possibly the nicest building of any kind that I've ever been in. And our province would be well advised to look at hiring this community to take care of any new small builds that it has planned to do. So Heartland School has 45 students currently this year, 4 full-time teaching staff, and that is supplemented by the colony. A half-time high school teacher actually wages are supplemented by the colony, and 2.75 EAs. So a couple things here. For the first 3 weeks of classes, students and staff were in class, and then they had to shift very quickly to remote learning. And it's important to note that in terms of philosophies and beliefs among colonies, there's a distinction between Division 1 colonies and Division 2 colonies, and Heartland is a Division 2 colony. And part of that belief system is to keep their members more sheltered from many aspects of society, the most obvious of which is internet access. However, even though it was really out of their comfort zone, their commitment to a quality education for their children outweighed the negative aspects of the internet. So what happened throughout this whole time was the teachers and EAs worked remotely, and the colony members assisted and supervised in class while the students were there. There were former graduates that really stepped up to volunteer and supervise in the classroom. The head German teacher and the preacher were regularly checking in with students throughout the day. And also worth noting is the fantastic job that the Heartland teaching staff did to organize and implement a really effective remote learning program on very short notice. And in fact, what they learned and pioneered was extremely valuable to our other colonies that had to shift to remote learning this year as well. So that was Sylvia Evanson was leading the team through this year, and Laura Lee Reimer, who has been one of the classroom teachers there, has taken over as principal while Sylvia is on mat leave. As I mentioned, the internet accessibility. So, and so just recently, while I was putting this together, I put in here students and staff were really excited for in-person learning because the bulk of the year they haven't been. And their main industry is a laser shop where they have a 3D printer. Next is Hoffer School on Greenwell Colony, which is located on the north side of 317 and on the west side of Highway 12. So Hoffer School has 42 students, 3.4 teaching staff, and 2 full-time educational assistants. And as you saw in the previous picture, the staff and students are really proud of their tower gardens. They produce many types of vegetables, including lettuces that students eat daily with their lunches. And they used their sustainable education grant this year to purchase a greenhouse that is planned to be used to start seeds for flowers and vegetables and will be a great part of their science units moving forward. They do have a plan to repurpose the current gym into classroom space and build a new gym on the east side of the school building. So kind of where you see the playground and where there's a car parked, just on the other side of that is where they're planning to build the new gym. They are proud of the many outdoor activities that the students engage in, and up until this year have been involved in International Play Day with a lot of support from the colony. Unfortunately, that had to shift because of the protocols. Just of note, Principal Ben Hoffer got his start in Sunrise at Gillis School when I was there, actually, when he was a student teacher there in his certification year. And so their main industry is agriculture, a bunch of different forms that takes place in. I can tell you that the bacon they produce is the best I've ever had. And they also do a great job with their construction of ATCO trailers. Next up is Richland School on Ridgeland Colony, which is our southernmost school, just off Highway 12, south of Enola. Richland has 32 students, 1.9 teaching staff, and 1.33 educational assistants. So since 2008, they hadn't graduated any students before that, and since then they've done a regular job of doing that, and they're really proud of their graduates. They've got grad photos on their grad wall. And in 2008 was the first year Principal Robert Pankratz was started there, and he's really proud of all of the students' accomplishments. And since then, the support for continuing education after graduation has been growing in the community, and one of the current EAs there right now is a Richland grad, and there's another grad that's currently in the Bachelor of Education program with the intent to become a teacher on the colony. Homes are increasingly becoming connected to the internet, and that's allowing students, especially high school students, to continue building their technical literacy. There's daily Phys Ed, which is outside year-round, and although it's embraced by the students and staff, it also limits their opportunities to engage in all types of Phys Ed programming and activities. The connection between the school and the community continues to strengthen, and it's evidenced by former students are regularly coming back to visit with the staff. And their main industry is fish farm, and they are currently building a world-class fish farm. And we have Springwell School on Brightstone Colony, which is located north of 317 and east of Highway 12, so close to Hoffer School. So Springwell has 31 students, 2.3 teaching staff, and 1 full-time educational assistant. And of note, that EA is funded through divisional conversions and colony funding. So the EYE from this fall, and if you recall from my literacy presentation earlier this year, it's a developmental assessment for all kindergarten students and looks at different domains of development, like self-awareness and environment, social skills, cognitive skills, language and communication, and physical development. And this fall, all of the Springwell kindergarten students were green in all domains. And 89% of their students right now are at or above grade level in literacy. And so what's evidence here is a strong belief in the importance of education for their children. And as a colony member, Principal George Waldner has significantly contributed to the success of the students at Springwell. And there's some real community pride in the physical plant. It may not look like much from the outside in this picture, but inside is just a wonderful layout with an abundance of natural light, and it was skillfully constructed with some real high-end craftsmanship. And their main industry is farming and bottle manufacturing. So this chart illustrates the number of students in each grade, as well as the class composition in the multi-age classrooms in each school. It really highlights the need to embrace multi-age philosophy because it really requires a dynamic and flexible approach by all the educators in all these schools to meet the diverse needs of the students. You can see that this year expectation of 28 graduates. And as we go on to graduation, so due to the very small numbers of students that graduate in each school, and in some years we have no eligible students in our colony schools that are to graduate. So it made more sense to show a 5-year combined look at graduation in our colony schools. And so to note, this is several points higher than the Sunrise rate and quite a bit higher than the provincial average. And although this is a 5-year look, if we went back and looked back over the past 10 to 15 years, you can see that it has been a continuous climb since the early 2000s. So uniqueness of colony schools, I've mentioned about the multi-age classrooms. There really is no other option than to celebrate and embrace multi-age education in our colonies. And as someone who was a principal in a small school previously and who taught in a multi-age setting, I can tell you that it is difficult. It's not an easy job, but it is also very rewarding. And I give our staff there and all of our schools a lot of credit for the great work they do for all of our students. Along with that, the EAs that are there are a vital part of ensuring that our students receive the support that they require, especially given that all of our students are EAL. You know, they're in multi-grades and multi-levels, and having the extra adult support is necessary for success. So our high school students are on multiple platforms and schedules for their distance learning courses. All of our high school students take several courses remotely. For some of them, all of their courses are done remotely through HBNI and TMO. And both of those are via different school divisions, and it makes it really difficult to schedule effectively. So we've started the conversation on the possibility of a Sunrise solution to this, and especially now that all of our high school students have internet in all of our buildings. It's really something that we're going to look at next year and hope to have some sort of implementation for 21-22. Along with that, our high school apprenticeship has been fantastic for our colony schools. Last year in Sunrise as a whole, 117 high school apprenticeship credits were granted. And of those 117, 71 credits were earned by colony students. So that's 61%. Kudos to Greg Link for working with all of our colony administrators to make sure we have all this in place for our students. So every small high school struggles to find ways to offer course options to high school students, and it's even more difficult on our colonies given their relatively small sizes, which just reinforces the importance of the high school apprenticeship credits and why a Sunrise remote learning solution would make a lot of sense. Sub-teachers and EAs, throughout the pandemic, it's been difficult for all schools to secure subs, but it's been even more magnified on our colonies. We don't know the exact reasons why, and maybe it's just an apprehension of the unknown on colonies, but we will continue to encourage our subs to take the opportunities to work there when they arise. Another unique thing to highlight is every one of our colonies has German school on site for all of our students. And we never really have to question what our kindergarten enrollment is going to be like on the colonies because we know. And so that kind of stable enrollment and long-term planning allows us to make some concrete plans in terms of staffing and programming for students. And it doesn't happen often, but on occasion families do move in between colonies. And although it likely goes without saying, I felt it was really important to include the fact that the strong faith-based culture in the colonies extends into the schools, and I think it's something that we should be celebrating. And I will wrap up with this picture from Grafton Colony School, and I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Jody. Appreciate the presentation. Jody, you used two abbreviations that maybe many of the board members aren't aware of. Can you explain that what about high school students taking, and you used HBNI and TMO? Can you explain those?
Yeah, so they're both online platforms, and so our high school students, as I mentioned, you know, they don't have we don't have the options to have in class to have teachers in front of them for all of the courses that they require to graduate, and so these are options. And Kathy, you may want to jump in just to help me out a little bit more, but I know one of them, I believe it's HBNI, is through the Portage School Division. And I don't know where. I think TMO has to works in conjunction with many of the colonies, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong with those.
At what point do you want me to jump in?
So whenever. How about now?
Yeah, so the big difference is that the HBNI is the Hutterian Brethren Network of Instruction, and it's run by Hutterites. The other one is the teacher-mediated option, and it's run by Manitoba Education. Is probably the predominant difference. They both have teachers that are employed by those organizations who do instruction with the kids and connect with the kids, but that's probably the main difference. Good job, Jody.
Thanks, thanks, Jody. Are there any questions from trustees?
Yes. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Don, Nicole.
Okay, this is not really a question, but I noticed the uniqueness of colony schools. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention that is really important to the education. One is that you did forget about ISO. They use HBNI, TMO, and ISO, which is a correspondent course with no in-class instruction, all on reading the book. The other thing that's important to realize is that all these kids that come to school in kindergarten have German as a first language. In fact, all of them have German as a first language, and sometimes when they come to school, they know no English at all. Some of them do, but so that is I guess something that the teachers have to deal with for the first couple of years. They're not only teaching the numbers and arithmetic and stuff like that, and how to read, but they're doing it in different languages that they are familiar with.
Thanks, Trustee Nicole. Trustee Barry, you had a question?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Excuse me. I got a couple of questions. I guess my first question, thanks, Jody, for the presentation. My first question is, you touched on talking about principals at a few of the colonies. Is there a principal on every colony? And my next question is, you talked about the graduation of the students from the colonies. Are you aware of what's the rate of any of the students going to get further education elsewhere?
Yeah, so the first one is every colony school has a portion of FTE time dedicated to their principal role, and so it's not a heck of a lot. It's usually about a 0.1. So it kind of speaks to how dynamic and flexible and adaptable that they all need to be. And then your second question, we don't have. I'm sure there's a way we could get some of that data in terms of the continuing of education, but it's. I can tell you that from my communication and dialogue with our colony admin, that it's something that has been building over the years, and that it is something that is more and more being supported by the colonies for their education.
All right.
Thanks, Trustee Barry. Trustee Pachkowski.
Hi, Jody. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I just have one question, and my question is, and I'm not even sure if you can answer it tonight. Do we have any data relevant to the learning outcomes in our colony schools and how that data compares to all the other schools in our division?
We would. I mean, we can pull out report card data from every specific school, and so that isn't something that we did for for this presentation, but it is something that can be done. But that would be the comparable data would be the report card data. I guess the other thing that could be looked at is, when we were still doing the provincial assessments, we could pull that as well.
Okay, thank you. I think just to follow up, I think sorry, I guess I should have maybe stated it in the first place. Was the reason I ask is because it's interesting to see, I mean, and it's not something that is really out of our hands, but the teacher to student ratio is probably much different than a lot of other schools, and it would be interesting to kind of see how that correlates with student outcomes, because every time that discussion comes up, from a trustee standpoint or even a political standpoint, in the sense of classroom sizes, it would be interesting to have that data to be able to reference, because if it is an indication where smaller class sizes are impacting student learning outcomes in a positive way, then I think it's something that we always want to push for, and we want to stress with our with our government and maybe trying to help us in that regard. So I think that was the reason why I asked the question. So thank you very much.
One of the things I would like to add, Jared, is that sometimes with really small groups of kids, there becomes a statistical significance that we can't measure. So if we've only got 5 kids in a particular grade level, even with the provincial assessments, they won't be able to say whether that meshes or use it as a comparative, because 1 or 2 results can really skew what that average is. So we'd have to be a little bit creative in the way that we did that, for sure. For information, I think that our colony ratio, and actually that's right, I know our colony ratio is a 1 to 50.
Kat, one of the things that we do have data and that Jody showed us today is that a 90% graduation rate. We don't have a 90% graduation rate in our other schools. And so certainly over, in the 6 schools over the last 5 years, 90%, that's well above the provincial average. Certainly, so there's one other piece of data that's one piece of data that he showed. But good question, Trustee Pachuski. Trustee Duma, you have a question.
Just a question about the Sunrise solution, and is that being initiated by Sunrise or the colonies themselves bringing that forward? Where's the start of that coming from?
Can I answer that one? Oh.
Absolutely, go ahead, please.
I'll start it, and then Jody can pick it up, because it started with our principals meetings, and our colony group would meet during their grade level meetings, and we started to brainstorm around what are we doing at the high school level, and it's all different, and is there a way that we could timetable some of these things? So it was a principal solution. It was 6 of us, 6 of them and myself in a room, kind of hammering that out. And then the pandemic hit, and during some of what Jody explained with the remote learning, it came back up. And I think that's probably, Jody, where if you want to pick up any further conversation, that's where it started from.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, 2 things. One is it wasn't going to be possible before when not all of our colonies had internet access. And so now that is in place, that becomes possible. And then the other part is sometimes when somebody new comes in and asks why and asks some questions, and so I was the new guy and was, just trying to get information and checking for understanding. And sometimes when somebody else is saying like, why can't we look at this in a different way? Sometimes that helps the conversation with others that may not have been looking at it that way.
Thank you for that information. I guess I just wanted to, I think the conversations are good. I just want to have some understanding that it's not something that's being mandated. It's something that's a conversation, and hopefully everybody looks at some sort of solution together, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no. I mean, we have an idea of what we think might work, but I can tell you there's a lot of respect here for our colony communities and you know what they do to ensure that their kids are getting a great education, and so we work with them.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Jody? Okay, hearing none. Thanks very much, Jody, for the time that you're taking out to put this together and come and present. It's good. It's certainly good. Some good information for us. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Yeah, have a good night. Let's move on. So 5.1 on our agenda is our minutes of April the 6th. Be it resolved that the board adopt the April 6th board meeting minutes. I'm going to mover and a seconder. Moved by
Pachkowski.
Trustee Pachkowski, seconded by
I'll second it.
by Trustee Nickel. Thank you. Any questions to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote.
I wonder if you could, sorry, it's Trustee Duma, just where it talks about 3.2, it's very near the beginning of the minutes, and it just states emergency meeting, and then further on down we have a motion that accepts the minutes. So it's actually the emergency board meeting. I wonder, so we just keep consistency. The 3.2 just could be corrected to insert the word board instead of emergency meeting, emergency board meeting, because it will reflect on the motion later on where the minutes are accepted. You could even include a date for that if you wanted, but just so there's consistency so people know what's being talked about, that we're not talking about two separate meetings.
Thank you, Diane. Stacey, we can add that emergency board meeting, put a date to it. Good idea. Thank you. All right. Hearing no more, we'll vote. So that passed 6 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 abstained. We have 6.1 is our superintendent's report. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I did want to share a little bit about what's going on in Sunrise. So I've provided my report for you. You've got some information about kindergarten orientations, and I'm going to try and put myself here on the screen because in the kindergarten orientation bit, it talks about how we are not able to do those in person, but our schools are all connecting with their kindergarten families and students who would like to start kindergarten in the fall. And our schools are also making sure that all of our kindergarten students have these lovely kindergarten bags that they put together. They have books in them, they have some dice, they have a skipping rope for physical education, they've got some scissors for cutting, some math manipulatives, and all sorts of fun little treats in here to help students get ready for school. So if we haven't registered with kindergarten or we haven't heard from our school, please get in touch because they have a lovely kindergarten bag for your child who might be starting school in September. We're also piloting a virtual EYE-DA, and so Jody talked about the early years assessment, and we're piloting that in 3 schools so that we can try and see whether or not this is something that we can do virtually, anticipating that we might be in pandemic state a little longer than any of us would like to, wanting to make sure that we still have that tool and are able to do those kinds of things. Leading right into that, we are in this pandemic state and our schools are at the point where graduation gatherings are very planned, but very not likely to be large group again. So all of our schools are currently aiming at having graduations similar to last year, where small groups can come as individuals, where there'll be lots of videotaping of messages and lots of individual opportunities to come get diplomas. But all of that depends entirely upon the restrictions that are in place in the public, and how large groups can be either indoors or outdoors. So our schools are madly planning for what we think is going to happen, and then to be able to throttle up or throttle down from either of those things. So right now, Sunrise is not having any large-scale graduations or gatherings. We don't anticipate that that's going to change by June. So we are communicating with our families about that being similar to us. We've had some questions about canteen services, and again, the restrictions are that we cannot have canteens or snack bars and those kinds of things in our schools. We do have prepackaged nutrition snacks for our breakfast and lunch programs, but there is some pretty serious tracking that needs to be on the go for distributing those kinds of things. We want to make sure that our students are not going hungry, but we've got to make sure that we track where those have been purchased, who's handled them, and who's handed them out, and all those kinds of things. Again, at this stage of the game, we're well into planning for next year, and I'm peeking at my other screen here. We're well into planning for next year, so wanted to make sure that trustees and public knew that if there are families who have been homeschooling this year and are looking to come back to in-person learning in the fall, to please make sure that they're in touch with their school so that we are doing the planning to have space in classrooms and that we know that someone is coming back after a year away during the pandemic. And then just the last one is a pretty big one. I very often get a chance, every second week I do a COVID check-in with my principals. We have an hour blast where they get to hear about all of the things that are on the go and what we're hearing. And they get thanked because they are doing a lot of heavy lifting. I personally believe that the schools and the teachers and all of the staff in Sunrise are knocking it out of the park, but they're also doing that alongside our communities and our families as well. And we thank them for all of the work, because all of our communities are doing the hard work of making sure we follow all of our protocols and that we keep each other safe. And so I just want to put a quick thank you into my superintendent's report, letting people know that we notice, we appreciate it, and keep it up. We're not quite through, but keep it up. Unless there's questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Timko. Are there any questions for Kathy?
Yeah, Trustee Inslee, I have one. With regarding the band and instruments and singing in school, do we have any dates or timelines on that? It's just I was talking to a teacher in one of the city divisions today, and they've resumed their band classes, and like I know that your report says that obviously you're going to communicate like when this will happen. Do we think it would happen before the next school year? Do we have any ideas?
Yeah, so each of the schools have worked with their teachers and with their communities. Some of the difficulty is in the rental of instruments and putting out a cost to rent instruments that they may have not rented now. Some of it has to do with safety and space and whether it's feasible for them to be able to run their band programs. They've been in contact with their families and with their students, and to the schools is kind of doing what their community would like in line with the protocols. I could certainly put something together and tell you what each of the schools are or are not doing, but it is not a blanket, we're all back to band or we're all back to choral. They're communicating with their families to make that decision and letting them know.
Okay, so you don't know whether or not anything's going to resume before the end of school year? Like, and does there any look any hope?
It may not, and it may not for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes it has to do with, as I said, space. Sometimes it has to do with cost and rental of instruments. Mm-hmm. They are doing a bang-up job of the music program as they are in different ways, and students can still play instruments in video and small group sessions and those kinds of things. Right now, the variance and the numbers climbing are a pretty scary thing, and I'm, cautious and kind of trying to act out of an abundance of caution. I don't want to put anyone in our system in any danger. So I'll gather the information about who's where and maybe bring that back, Karen.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Kathy. Mr. Carlton, Secretary Treasurer's report.
Thanks, Paul. Just trying to get to the right file here. All right, I filed my report. As I was looking today and hoping to highlight a couple of key items, one being another pat on the back for our maintenance department for getting another project approved through what is now Central Services, used to be PSFB, and I noticed a rather glaring error on that slide. So I reported to you that in maintenance, we received approval for about 9,000 square feet of roofing at Oakbank Elementary at a cost of 70,000. Very small error. I missed a zero. We're looking at $700,000 for OBE roof. So I wanted to point that out. I did correct and send to Stacy, so she will update the materials in ESB. But I wanted to point that out. We're looking at about 700,000 for the roof at OBE, not 70,000 at the end of the day. Derek did offer as well something interesting. He's going to take some photos and potentially video. We were asked by the Office of Water Stewardship to put a UV water treatment area at Hazel Ridge School, and he was actually there today and took some video and said, "Can I get it to you today for the board meeting? You can show the trustees what that's all about." And I said, "Well, it's probably a little bit late, but I'll bring that to you next time." So that installation is complete, and I'll bring some video and photos and show you what that's all about. It's basically improves the quality of water for Hazel Ridge School. Couple other things to point out. We did complete a hire for a new ICT tech who begins work in the Oakbank area on this coming Monday. So we're hopeful that'll go well. A very interesting thing in transportation, and I'm super interested to see how this turns out. We have a requirement through PTU, the People Transportation Unit, to deliver evacuation drills on our buses to students on an annual basis. And generally speaking, of course, what that involves is driving a school bus to each school and having kids come out grade levels and showing them the proper way to exit the buses. Of course, in the current pandemic environment, that's a no-go. We're not going to be taking buses to schools. So Jason, our transportation manager, came up with a rather unique idea to produce a video doing some training for students on bus evacuations, and he's enlisted some drama students. He's got 8 drama students coming from École Edward Schreier School, and they're going to be producing a training video to deliver to students on bus evacuation. So I think they'll do a bang-up job. I'm really interested to see how that goes. The last piece I'll highlight, I did mention last week our finance department is currently working on our public sector compensation disclosure report. That is in the works with our auditors who review and sign off. I did mention last time we were hopeful to have it available to the board by April 30th. I just want to point out the requirement in the Public Sector Compensation Disclosure Act is 6 months after year end. So the requirement is that we have it available on our website by June 30th. So I don't think we're going to make that April 30th. But I'm hopeful we'll have it out to the board for information and then available for dissemination to the public. Hopefully in May sometime. One of the meetings in May will be bringing it back to the board. So those are kind of the pieces I wanted to highlight. Again, apologies for the error. We'll make sure when the report is uploaded permanently on ICT, that number is correct. $700,000 for the roof at OBE. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott?
Trustee Doom, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go
Dan.
ahead.
Yes.
Just a question about, usually after the March submission of our budget to the province, there's usually a second audit that takes place between March and I think May that's submitted to the province. Have we done that?
It's no longer a requirement, Trustee Duma, that it's audited. You're right. It historically had been a requirement. So of course, a school division year end is June 30th. We get an audit done. Our province's year end, in fact, most public sectors year end is March 31st. So the province asked for an interim report from all school divisions to roll into their consolidated financial statements. And there used to be a requirement that we have a sort of a mini audit performed on our numbers at March 31st. That is no longer a requirement. We do have to file reports and provide numbers for our year to date up to March 31st, but it's no longer a requirement that we have an audit performed on those numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. And just thanks for the report. Just to clarify, just the words that we're using in that report. I believe that we're using the word director for only the ICT and HR. They're directors and everybody else is a manager. Am I incorrect? I thought that's what our org chart said. So just in terms of just the labeling of those titles on that.
Yep, no, I believe that's correct, Trustee Duma. I'll double check and make sure that that terminology is correct.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Diane. Any other questions for Scott?
Yes, Trustee Barry here.
Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Scott, for the report. As you can aware, there was a while ago we had a report on electric buses. And I believe their report was supposed to be coming back from the board on that. So I guess be beneficial if we get that report.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Art. I noted in my report as well. Some other divisions of Manitoba are using propane right now, and Jason had expressed an interest. So maybe, you know, when we work on electric, we can sort of add the operating benefits as well for propane and bring all of that information back to the board on different alternative fuel sources at one time. But good point. Yeah, I know there's a follow-up to there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions?
I have a second question. Could you explain what a turnback is?
So generally speaking, there's been challenges in getting accurate information sometimes from staff who are required to fill in, let's say, hourly reports on their hours worked or route information. And generally, if it's not filled in correctly, we've gotten to the point where we say, you know, we're not correcting this for you. We send it back to them and ask them to recomplete it. So turnback is basically just sending the information back to the staff member and saying, this is not correct, do it again. So, you know, it wasn't really working. There was still significant confusion and errors. So we embarked on a pretty significant training exercise with some of our staff, particularly in transportation, on how to properly complete their paperwork. And that's really borne out some benefits. It's worked very well.
Sounds good, thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Scott. We're going to move on. We're into board business. The first one is our minutes committee. So our ad hoc minutes committee update. Diane, do you want to bring anything forward as to where we are?
You know, there's nothing to bring forward today. Apologies for just not having had the time to dig into that. But definitely will commit to having something for the next board meeting. Just have to set the time aside for that.
Thanks, Diane. Okay. 8.2 COVID costs. I guess that's you, Scott. Is there anything to report, or is that just is it just our report? Do we have questions?
Yeah, just a report, Paul. As you've maybe gotten used to, I do a more formal monthly report that goes into the province. This is sort of the halfway through the month report. Nothing concerning. We're generally looking at spending upwards of $300,000 a month on COVID costs, and there's $100,000 halfway through April. So nothing concerning, but I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Any questions from anyone? Thanks for the information, Scott. We're going to 8.3, and thanks for providing us for information, Scott. The Lac Bonnie Planning District Bylaw 2021-21. You've provided the information. Scott, I'm not sure that you have to go over it. Are there any questions from any trustees?
I don't know that area that well, and I didn't have a chance to look at the proximity of this plan to the school. Do you have any information on that?
I actually don't, Trustee Dillon. I'll have to dig into that. We looked at it just as a rezoning, but I'll take a look and see what the proximity is to the school for sure, and bring that back.
Well, just to make sure that if it's not in proximity to our school, we may want to relook at what that letter says, that this standard letter may not work for this application.
So Scott, can you take a look at that, and then we'll take a look at it. You and I will take a look at the letter that's there, if it's in proximity.
Yeah, absolutely. We can plot that in on the town of Lactabani and see how close it is, and then we can revisit the draft wording.
If
Thank
you look
you.
at it, it is at Lee River, so it's quite a ways away from the school.
Yeah, you're 10, 15 miles away.
Well, and I think the whole idea of asking for this standardized letter is the regulations allow us to ask for it, but it's not always in our best interest to just send a letter without putting some discretion into whether it's appropriate to send it. So I just think we don't always have to send one. We might want to rethink this one.
Thanks, Diane. Scott and I will take a look at it, and we'll report back to the board. And we'll have a conversation with the local trustee as well. Moving on to 8.4, long service and retirement celebration update. Kathy, I think that's you.
Yep, that's true. So traditionally, the Board of Trustees meets with our unions, and we do an event to celebrate anybody who is retiring, and also to commemorate anybody who has certain milestones of long service. So we met this past Monday at 4 o'clock to sort of talk about the pandemic options. We reviewed what we did last year and how that went, and the group landed at a place where we think it makes sense to do an entirely virtual, video recorded celebration this year. So we are going to put some of the building blocks together, and we're meeting again this coming Monday at 4 o'clock to sort of go through how that would look and how that would roll and what all the pieces are to make a final decision. But just to give a heads up to the whole board that we landed on a video compilation so that everybody can have some entry into the event. We'll be coming back for who would like to bring greetings and do speeches and toasts and roasts and the like.
Thanks, Kath. Any questions for Kathy? Hearing none, we'll move on. 8.5 is a decision-making matrix. It's a review. I think that Trustee Harris, you're back in here. Did you want to give us an update on that?
Thank you, Paul. The board has had learning sessions recently with an outside consultant regarding our decision-making matrix, and we are looking at reviewing that over the next several months, at least through the rest of this calendar year. And there will be a motion coming forward in just a couple of minutes regarding that. Thank you.
So should I wait for that motion, or can we come back to that, Robin?
I'll wait for
Okay.
in item 8.11. Thank you.
Thank you. 8.6 is a student fee plan. It's for information. Scott, did you want to talk to this?
Just super briefly that information was requested on both school fees and school funds, so I brought that back. I'd like the trustees to have a look at that, try to decipher the information I presented, and if there's any questions, certainly please let me know. And if there's more detailed information required, I'm happy to do my best to deliver.
Okay. So the purpose of this, Scott, is that you were asked because some of the trustees were talking about is that whether we want to collect school fees from the public. We're still discussing and debating that, and you were giving us some information with regard to school fees and what school fees are collected, and we're discussing as to is it something the board then wants to make a decision on. So that's part of it there. Are there any trustees that want to add comments to this? Okay, so hearing none, it is something that we will bring up at our next meeting with regard to student fees. And again, is it something that the board is going to go ahead and again, we're talking about whether we supplement it, whether we decide not to allow schools to charge fees, it is a conversation that we are going ahead and having. Thanks for bringing us that information, Scott. Did I miss anything, Scott or Kathy? Okay.
No, I think
Thank you for the information.
Can, Trustee Chair, just wondered if we could have some commitment on behalf of the board, just because this will affect September, that we will try to have something figured out by the end of May or the middle of June, just so that we have something planned out for September, whether we have a go or no in regards to this topic.
I think, yeah, you know what, Diane, that is a very good point. I think that it's something that myself and Kathy and Scott will work on. It is something that I think should be worked on sooner than later. I think going into too late in June is probably too late. It does need to happen within the next little while. So we'll commit to, Stacy, if you can commit to, we'll commit to. Scott, are we okay by saying that we'll commit to at least by the middle of May or beginning of May to middle of May to come back to the board with this?
Yeah, I think first step is this is something that's come up with the Finance Committee, so I didn't intend on bringing a more detailed report to Finance Committee, and then I think once we've gone through it there, certainly I think by middle of May we'll be ready to present a detailed report.
Perfect, thanks, and thank you, Diane Duma, for that, the reminder. Appreciate it. 8.7 is the Whitefell School Division request to join with our MLA meetings. Kathy, did you want to say anything to it? Basically, go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that has been in the proposed Education Modernization Act, or Bill 64, is this notion of regions joining together. So Sunrise has been flagged to join together with Whiteshell School District, which is Pinawa. So Tim Stefanition, who is the superintendent there, and I have been in touch just in terms of what are we hearing, and we both school boards are trying to get a hold of MLAs. And so we said in the interest of efficiency of everyone's time, that I would let Tim know if we were having a meeting and whether we wanted to extend and invite trustees of Whiteshell School District, and if they were to get a meeting, they would extend and invite us as well. Wanted to either seek permission or approval or yays or nays about whether we want to do that.
So a motion that Kathy, that I'm thinking is, be it resolved that Sunrise School Division invite the Whiteshell School Division trustees to any meetings that we have with our MLA in the next 2-3 months regarding school amalgamation in the future. Okay, so I need a seconder to that motion.
Pachkowski will second.
Okay, so basically we're just inviting, be it resolved that Sunrise School Division invite Whiteshell School Division to board to meet with the MLAs when we have firmed up dates with them. So there's the motion. It's seconded. Comments on the motion?
Pachkowski has a question.
Go ahead.
Have we got, sorry, I may have missed it. Have we got updates as to which MLAs have responded to us yet?
So as of today, there are 2 MLAs that have responded. One MLA in general, and that's the previous MA. Ron Schuler's office had responded, and as of tonight, Wayne Owasco has reached out to me. We haven't connected, but those would be the 2 that we know of. Kathy, did I miss anything? Scott, did I miss anything? So those are the 2 that I know of. So I'm expecting a conversation in the next day or so with Wayne Owasco, and we'll continue on with Ron Schuler. Anyone else? Comments, questions? So Stacy, it looks like we will have to vote by hand by this. Is that true?
That is correct, yeah.
I was trying to just put
Okay.
the motion into the chat so everybody could read it.
Okay, go ahead, Diane. So the motion is just basically saying for us is, as it is for Sunrise, to invite Whiteshell School Division trustees to meetings that we have set up with MLAs. Nothing more than that. Okay, so I'm going to go around and say if you're good with going ahead and doing that. Jared, are you good with that? Trustee Paczewski?
Yes.
Don Nickel?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Van Rollins?
Yes.
Karen? Karen Inslee?
Yep, yep.
Russ Reed?
Yes.
Diane Duma?
Yes, and we're not trustees, we're trustees. So my attempt.
That's all right. All right, so, and Paul Mangione says yes, so it's 9-0. Thank you for doing that. 8.8 is our 5-year capital plan. It's an action item. Be resolved that the board approve the 5-year capital plan as presented. I need a mover and a seconder to move by.
I'll move it.
Trustee Nickel, seconded by.
I'll second it, Reed.
Trustee Reed. Any discussion on the 5-year capital plan?
I guess a question was for me about the labs. So we did get Powerview Science Lab and the Lactibani labs completed? Because I see Lactibani is on an upgrade there. So I thought that was done at one time.
Lactibani, if memory serves, Trustee Duma had 2, and 1 was upgraded, and 1 is still not. So you know that the second one is on there. It's not in as bad a shape as the first one was, but still in need of an upgrade for sure.
Okay, so there was 2 there. Okay, thanks.
Right.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. And that was past 9-0. Thank you for doing that. Recall Edward Schreier School grounds. Barry, this is you, and there's a recommendation here. Whereas the public has contacted Trustee Barry regarding motorized vehicles on Edward School property grounds as a safety concern for students. Therefore, be it resolved, the Sunrise School Division correspond with the town of Bossier to enforce their snowmobile ATV bylaw. Did you want to make that motion, Trustee Barry?
Yeah, I'll move that, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
I need a seconder to the motion.
Paczkowski.
Trustee Paczkowski, thank you. Any questions on this?
Trustee Harris?
Go ahead, Trustee Harris.
So we actually have a procedure that talks about public concerns and complaints. It's procedure KE that the policy committee reviewed a month ago. And in it, it says that if a complaint is made directly to the Board of Trustees or to an individual board member, it will be referred to the superintendent or their designate, as well as the school administration. I think if we continue with this motion, that we're going outside of our procedure. And I don't think that's a precedent that we should be starting.
Thank you, Trustee Harris.
Other
comments?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, it may be, I guess he's quite correct in stating that, but however, this, in my mind, this is a safety issue for our students, and the public has contacted me. I think it's fair and reasonable for us to correspond with the town of Bossier to adhere to uphold their snowmobile ATV bylaw. There's no vehicles allowed on school property, so I think it's fair and reasonable we should do that.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. Anyone else?
Yes, I agree with Trustee Harris. We have a policy, and I think we should following our policy. We can't willy-nilly just change our policy when we feel like it. The policy said that we refer to the superintendent, so that's what we should be doing too. We shouldn't be going out of our lane and doing more than what the policy tells us to do. That's what the decision matrix is all about. We're talking about it right away. We're going against our policy, which I don't think is right.
Thank you, Trustee Nicol. Anyone else?
Pachkowski.
Go ahead.
Just as a way to to get everybody on the same page, I think maybe what we can do then is to follow our policy to refer the item to our superintendent, Timko, and have her contact the community and let them know all of our concerns.
Thank you, Trustee Pachuski.
Trustee Duma?
Anyone else?
Trustee
Go ahead,
Duma?
Trustee Duma. Go ahead, Trustee. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, Diane. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just like to say that the concern protocol, we can't direct the public as to who to speak to who when. We can have direction within our community of staff who we employ. But if a public person wants to speak to a specific trustee, this seems like it's not really anything to do with personnel or employees. It really is a public concern. I don't see any problem with having this go through the board. I think that there is some wiggle room on that policy in regards to the concern protocol because you cannot direct the public to follow that. I don't think that's the intention of that concern protocol. It's more for inside the system. So I would support this motion. I see no problem with it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Trustee Harris.
Go ahead, Trustee Harris.
Hopefully I'm easier to hear now. I understand I was a little soft before. I don't interpret it that way. This is a public concern. If a board member hears a public concern, we as a board member are to refer it to the superintendent. And I think that's what should be done in this case.
So I can tell you that this is referred to the superintendent. The superintendent is called the school. As of right now, the school doesn't have concerns. It's not an issue from the school's point of view. So do you know what? It was referred that way. Certainly Trustee Barry feels quite strongly that there's a concern to it, and that's why it's now up to the board to decide. But it was referred. The school did come back to us with saying is that it's not a concern for them, but Trustee Barry feels that it is.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add another point just for clarification, the public's brought this to my attention. It's a safety concern for our students, and I feel that we have to, our safety or concerns is up the utmost importance, and it's up to the town of Beausejour to administer their bylaw. They have a private company that's hired to administer their bylaw. So I think it's not unreasonable. We could request them to administer the bylaw, and that private company could do a routine patrol on the school property to adhere that none of these vehicles are on the school property in the future.
Thank you. Any other trustee who want to speak up to this? Trustee, go ahead, Trustee Pachkowski.
I would like to amend the motion to read that the board refer the item to the superintendent and direct the superintendent to follow up with the community, with the town of Beausejour.
So that's an amendment. Trustee Barry, you're the one that made, oh no, sorry. We need a seconder to the amendment, right?
Trustee Rowland would second that.
Okay. So now the amendment. Want to say that again, Jared, please?
Be it resolved, the Board of Trustees refer the concern brought forward to Trustee Barry to the Superintendent Timko, so the superintendent can follow up with the town of Beausejour regarding our concerns.
Thank you. Any questions to the amendment?
Yes. I like my amendment to the amendment.
Go ahead.
I like to strike out what we're telling the superintendent to do. We're going to refer to the superintendent, and we should let her deal with it the best way that she can. I don't believe that we should be directing her how to do it. We're going to ask her to do it, and not necessarily how she's going to do it. We want the problem solved, but it's up to her to decide how. So I want to strike out the part that says we're going to get her to direct her to do something. We're just going to refer to the superintendent. That's what I like to see.
Pachkowski's okay with that.
Trustee Pett? All right. So basically what we're asking is, can you say it again, Trustee Pachkowski?
Be it resolved that the board refer the motion, the concern brought forward to Trustee Barry to Superintendent Timko, or to Superintendent.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the amendment. Any more conversation on the amendment?
Trustee Inslee, can you just clarify, Mr. Chairman, has the superintendent not already been to the school? Is that what you just said a few minutes ago? I apologise if I didn't quite get it.
I did say that.
So would
superintendent? So the superintendent has talked to the school, and as of right now, the school doesn't have a concern with it. However, the superintendent wants to go ahead and deal with it. We're referring it to the superintendent.
Okay, so the superintendent didn't deal with it last time. Is that what I'm hearing then? She went to them, they don't think it's a problem,
No.
and it wasn't. Sorry.
I can maybe address that, Paul.
Thank you.
Karen, go ahead.
So I did do a follow-up with the school in terms of were there vehicles or are there ATVs or snowmobiles or any motorized vehicles on the property? And there are not. From their perspective during the school day, they would be made aware of those. And it is not a major, like it's not on their radar in terms of a major problem in the school. If there was a vehicle, they would immediately go find out who it is and follow that up with discipline. And that might involve contacting the RCMP or the authorities, depending on the situation, but it's not a large issue that's coming to the forefront in their school. So that's the follow-up that I did there. I don't know the information that Trustee Barry has, so I can't follow that up with the community members. So I followed it up with the school to find out if there was an issue there, if that helps clarify what I did or didn't do.
Yeah, it clarifies what you did, but I'm just like confused as to the amended motion. What else do we need you to do if you've already done it?
So the amended motion is that it's resting in Kathy's hands, and certainly Kathy could find out from Trustee Barry as to who the people are, as to what it is. But as of right now, Kathy has talked to the school. So the process is there was a complaint. It was brought to Kathy. Kathy talked to the school. The school says that it's not a real big. They don't see that it's a big issue. Kathy and Art really haven't spoken to find out about where that information is coming from. That's what Kathy could go ahead and do. It's really about leaving the information with Kathy and Kathy going ahead and dealing with it and as she sees fit. That's the amended motion that Dawn suggested, and Trustee Pachkowski has agreed to. So that's what we would be voting on.
Okay.
So the question is then, let's vote on the amendment, is for it to be say it again for me.
I put something
Chair,
in the chat. I put something in the chat if you want to read it, if that speaks to what you just spoke about.
Be it resolved that the concern brought to Trustee Barry with regard to motorized vehicles in Edwards Fire School grounds be referred to the superintendent, with information be brought back to the board. Thank you, Trustee Duma. That's really what we're talking about. So I'm going to call the question on that. Who's all in favor in that motion? I'll go around the table. Jared?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Robin? Robin, have we lost you? I'll come back to you. Art?
No.
Diane Rollins?
Yes.
Diane Duma?
No.
Karen?
No.
Russ?
Yes.
Robin? Have we lost Robin? Kathy, can you check and see if we've lost Robin?
He's still there. He's just having a little bit of technical, he's trying to get back to video.
Is there a way that he can vote on this? Kathy, is there... Kathy, is there a way that you can go and find out his vote? Because you're both in the education center, are you not?
I'm here. Sorry, my apologies. I went into the chat and I couldn't get back. I am voting in agreement with that motion.
Okay. And Manga says yes. So it is a 6-3 vote that that's what's going on with the motion, 6-3. Thank you. Let's move on. Committee reports. We have policy committee, and that would be Chair Harris.
So policy had a meeting on April the 8th. We have a number of recommendations that are coming forward in our next 3 items. Our minutes have been included for the excitement to everyone to read.
Okay. So 811 is our decision-making matrix, and it's be it resolved that the board place a message on the existing decision-making matrix with policy number 9, board and superintendent relation, that reads: the decision-making matrix is currently under review by the Board of Trustees until the end of December 2021. Are you making that motion, Trustee Harris?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Don. Trustee Nichol, questions onto that motion?
Yes. I agree with the motion, but I don't agree with how they put the under construction. I think the under construction should be so that I can still read what the policy is. Right now it shows under construction, it obliterates some. I can't see all the words, so I'd like to see under construction underneath it or on top of it. So we.
Okay, but that doesn't have to do with that doesn't have to do with the actual motion. You're just talking about what's on the paper.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. All right. So the motion is fine, Don. I understand that. It needs to be clear, so we'll make sure we get that clear. Any questions to the actual motion? That's a good point, Don. Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Art, we're just waiting on you. So 8 in favor and 1 is abstained. Thank you. The standing committee selection process, that's for information. You've got the table that's there. Are there any comments or questions on that?
Trustee Inslee, the committee selection process, this, according to your minutes, this has come back to the committee 4 times now. Is there actually going to be a motion brought forward on this because there's only going to be 2 more policy meetings before the end of the year. And I just wondered, after 4 delays, I guess, like, or 4 discussions, how is this going to proceed?
Thanks, Karen. So this started out as a direction from the board to look at attendance at committee meetings, and it then evolved into, should we look at how our standing committees are created at the first meeting in September? At the moment, it is by election, and we were looking at the idea, should we allow it that a different process be made? And it took us a while to review other school division policies to see if any other divisions were doing it certain ways. And this was hard work to get to this point. And we think it is a big change if we do this. So we have asked, and it says in our agenda, please come prepared to discuss the attached draft changes to the standing committee selection process. And what we want is to know from the board, should we continue with this idea of looking at appointments for standing committees, or simply leave the whole policy as is, where we have an elected process? If we're leaving it as is, then the policy will stop working on this policy. If people on the board feel that we could go to an appointed process, then yes, this will come back as a motion to change the, I forget what the exact document is, the operational bylaw. And that would be done by the end of June. If the board is given, and we would like that kind of tonight, if we can go round table quickly to get the feel of the board, should we continue with the idea of looking at appointments, in which case this will come back as an operational bylaw motion.
Thanks, Robin. So I'm going to go round table, and Karen, while we're with you, I'm going to start. So what are your thoughts, Karen?
Just a minute. Can I just interject that you're just asking you're not asking whether we're in favor of appointment or election. You just want us to continue on looking at it. Is that right, Robin?
Well, I think this isn't a formal vote in no way. Is there a feeling on the board that we should be looking at changing from an elected process to an appointed process for standing committees?
Okay, thanks.
I'm just asking for opinions. We're not holding anybody to it. It's just whether is there an appetite for your committee to continue to work? Is that fair, Robin?
Correct. Good word, appetite.
Okay.
Yes.
Karen, your thoughts?
I like the idea of appointing committee members. Okay. Not voting. Yeah.
Okay. Diane Duma.
I like a lot of the items that are addressed in this draft number 2. I do think it's a nice idea to change it up and do appointments. There's a couple things in here. I don't think that the senior administration do anything about selecting those committee members. They can assign who they want for staff to be on the committees, but they don't have any say in who's on the committees in terms of the trustees. And the other piece I would like to add in here is that that minutes of all meetings are provided to the Secretary Treasurer to be filed, so that we don't lose all of the information from these meetings that are occurring, that minutes are kept. Other than that, I like it. It's pretty good.
Thank you. Russ?
I'm on the policy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can? Okay, I'm on the policy committee. Yeah, I'm on the policy committee, and I'm the lone dissenting voice, I guess. I'm in favor of elections as opposed to appointments. I don't like appointments. I'm just a Democrat, I guess, but I'm in favor of voting, so.
Okay, thanks, Russ. Dan Mullins?
I am not in favor of appointment. I am in favor of election. Democratic vote.
Thank you. Art? Trustee Barry?
I'm okay with appointments.
Trustee Harris?
I like both. No, I do. I like both. But I think it's great. I think it would be good to allow all trustees to have the opportunity to sit and not be shut out from an election. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Trustee Nickel?
I'm in favor of the committee to continue looking. I'm not going to tell you which way I'm thinking, because that wasn't the question, just to see whether the committee can continue.
Thanks, Don. Trustee Paczewski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a lot of difficulty with the conversation that we're having as a board right now. And the reason for that is because I know for sure myself, but I've heard a lot at this table and amongst other school boards throughout the province, and what we're going through with Bill 64 right now, or some of the proposed changes in there, and the very strong opposition that we've taken against having an appointed education authority. I think it takes away from a democratic process that's very important, and I feel very much the same with regards to this. It would be nice if trustees, if it was a little bit more fair and spread out, but I do really believe in a democratic process. So if the democratic process leads to a trustee not being able to sit on a committee, that's the way it is, and that's the way it has been. And in a system that we're in, I strongly believe that's the way it should stay. I just have a lot of difficulty that we're even having this conversation. And if we are, then we shouldn't be so critical of what's happening in Bill 64. So I'm opposed, and very strongly opposed to doing this.
Thank you, Trustee Paczewski. I can tell you my opinion is I'm similar to Don. Do I think that the committee could continue? Do I also agree with Jared? Do I think that do I agree with Bill 64 certainly about elections as opposed to appointment? Do I still think though that the committee could go ahead and continue and talk? Because I would love to hear what they have to say. Absolutely. So I think there's your Trustee Harris. There's your kind of feedback. Where it's pretty well down the middle. There's 9 people. I think that it's pretty close to being down the middle as to where you are. But I think that your committee probably should continue to do some work and come back to the board again.
Thank you, Paul.
So 8.13 is a notice of motion. So be it resolved that the board create a new section 6 within policy 16.1 to say the superintendent will provide the board with a monitoring report on an annual basis regarding the management of school funds. See procedure DBB in the form of the year-end school funds report found in procedure DBB-E. So we need someone. Is this information or a notice? So this is a notice of motion. I'm sorry, Robin. This is something you're proposing for next meeting?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to add to this, Robin?
The policy committee was tasked back in February to look at the collection and disposition of school funds, and we had till May 18th to come back to the board, and this is the direction that we recommend, that a new year-end schools fund report be added to the procedure. And in order for that to happen, then we're adding a new item to the specific policy 16.1, as you've noted, and it's all documented in our agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions for clarification? Nice work, Robin. So that'll be coming forward at our next meeting, I'm assuming, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Moving on, 8.14 Finance Committee update. Chair Rowland.
So not too much to report as we're meeting next week, and we will have some interesting things to bring the following month, I'm sure. A few things on our agenda for that, but just attaching the minutes from our last meeting for your perusal, and that's it. It's a light one for us today.
Are there any questions for Chair Rowland? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Finance Committee check register. There is not one that's there, so we're moving on. Is that right, Diane?
That is correct.
Thank you. So 9.0 professional development, we have nothing. Financial monitoring report, we do not have board correspondence. You've got information, nice to know information about our board meeting May 4th and May 18th. Questions from the public, 14.1. Scott, is there anything that you received tonight for questions from the public?
So folks, looking for my mute button and just double checking, and I do not have any questions. No.
Okay. So we do not have to move back into in-camera, but we do have two motions coming from in-camera. The first motion is that be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accept a proposal from the Sunrise Teachers Association as recommended by the negotiating committee. Before we go there, Trustee Magnon needs to declare a conflict of interest, and that I think Trustee Paczewski, you need to take 17.1 from here. Jared, can you do that?
I can, yes.
And can you ask if there's anyone else in a conflict of interest?
I don't have to now, but yes, I will do that. Are there any other trustees that would like to declare a conflict?
Yes, Trustee Reed, I'm in the same position. I have a conflict of interest, and so I won't be able to vote on this particular issue.
Thank you, Trustee Reed. So I will read the motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accept the proposal from the Sunrise Teachers Association as recommended by the Negotiations Committee. Do I have a mover?
I'll move it.
Trustee Nichol moves. Do I have a seconder to that motion?
Trustee Duma will second it.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Trustee Duma seconds the motion. Are there any questions to the motion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. I believe we are voting on ESB, correct, Stacy?
That is correct.
The motion was carried, 7 in favor and 2 abstained. Thank you, everybody. I'll now hand over the table back to Chairman Magnon.
Thank you, Trustee Paczkowski. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees direct the Secretary Treasurer to extend the ICT lease in Oak Bank for a period of 1 year at a cost as recommended the Secretary Treasurer in camera. Yeah. I need a mover and a seconder to that.
Paczkowski moves.
Trustee Paczkowski, seconded by?
Trustee Duma seconded.
Trustee Duma, thank you. Any questions to this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed 9-0. Thank you for doing that. Just to clarify, we don't have Scott and Kathy. We don't have anything else to do. See head shaking.
We do not.
Okay. Okay. So then I need a motion to adjourn.
Pachkowski.
Second by motion by trustee Pachakowski, and it is 8:40. Thank you very much for your time tonight, senior administration and trustees. Stay safe, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
Hey, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.